In this episode, we discuss what factoring is, but we really get into the alarming rise of fraud within the transportation industry. We also explore some practical tips for trucking companies to protect themselves against fraud. And Jennifer's going to share some real life stories that highlight the risks and the challenges faced by carriers. Welcome to another episode of the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Harris, along with Johnny. Today, we have an insightful episode ahead as we dive into the world of transportation factoring and fraud protection. Our special guest is Jennifer Lockett, an experienced operations manager from Altline, which is owned by the Southern Bank, and she's located in Birmingham, Alabama. She has over 18 years of transportation experience. Jennifer brings a wealth of knowledge and firsthand experience. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
And Jennifer, welcome to the show. Can you start off, please,
Hey.
by introducing yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Thank you so much for having me. I am Jennifer Lockett. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm an operations manager for Altline by the Southern Bank. I have 18 years in the transportation industry in some fashion or another. I began my career in a warehouse in Wyoming, checking drivers in and out of the warehouse. I then became the raw materials purchase order person where I coordinated all the transportation for raw materials in. I worked for a big brokerage for a little bit. Sales was definitely not for me. And I've been in transportation factoring for the last 8 years.
And just real quick, what is, for those who may not know, most people I think would know what factoring is, but can you just give us and let me just tell our audience that we're going to get into fraud is what the topic is today, but tell us a little bit about factoring.
Factoring is a commercial financing option for businesses who may not want to or may not qualify for your traditional loan. And it's funded based off your accounts receivable. So payment is not expected from the carrier. Payment comes in from their debtors. So when you're doing the underwriting, the debtor credit is more looked at than the actual carrier credit.
There we go. So, and I read on your website, you really don't need, if you're a startup, you can still use factoring because you don't look at the trucking company's credit rating, right?
Correct. Or even how long they've been in business. So it's great for a startup for your cash flow.
Yeah. Now, let's continuing on that thought, kind of, but fraud. What kind of fraud? Now, specifically, if we talked about freight factoring, what types of fraud are we seeing in the freight factoring business?
As I'm sure everybody knows, transportation's seen about 18-month recession. So it has caused freight factoring fraud to increase at an alarming level. We're seeing a lot of identity theft fraud. We're seeing collusion, and we're also seeing double brokering, as I'm sure everyone's seeing.
Johnny, I was out to see a client this week, and they lost a load of electronics through a double brokering situation. You know, like it was only 240,000 US or some bloody thing. Anyways, yeah. So it hurt.
Yeah.
How,
Yes.
Jennifer, how does somebody start to commit fraud? Like, how do I steal a trucking company's identity?
A trucking company's identity, just like all companies' information is online. You pull up Safer Carrier 411, you can see their address, their MC, their phone number. And what we're seeing a lot of is the bad actors are changing the long-standing good carriers information with the FMCSA. For example, I had a lead the other day from a business partner, so we get leads from them quite a bit. And I pulled him up on Carrier 411, and the first red flag was they had changed the phone number a month ago. So I just kind of kept that in my mind, called him. And when I called him, he had said, I need you to send the application to my new email. And I said, okay, it's not the email on Carrier 411. And he said, no, I lost my phone and I don't have access to my email. So that was red flag number 2. So we send him an application and we use a program, DocuSign liveness detection.
Mhm.
So whoever's filling out the document will hold up their ID and then they'll take a selfie, kind of like when you set up your phone where you had to rotate your head.
Yep.
And through AI, it tells you if their ID is legitimate and if they match, if they're the same person. And of course he didn't do it. Once he got that, he stopped because he knew we were probably on to him. But to make sure, we called the phone number that it was changed from a month ago, and the real carrier answered, and he said, "You're the 7th factoring company to call me in the past 2 weeks."
Wow.
So what carriers need to make sure is if they get a correspondence that says it's from the FMCSA, make sure it's .gov,
Yeah.
not .hotmail, not .anything else.
And one of the things that I've noticed, because I think we all get a number of spam emails that come into our inboxes and whatnot. And anything that I question, I click on the email name and it will open up the address so that you can see the full address. And, so it'll give you that, it should be .gov, but this one says .com or .org or .co or .hotmail or whatever it be. And it's like, that's one way to see
Yes.
right away if you've got a red flag that you need to deal with.
And
Correct.
the other thing I think everybody should be watching out for are the text messages.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
got a text message and an email from my bank, and it was
Yeah.
fraud. And it took me several minutes before I convinced myself, including a phone call to the bank, to verify that it was fraud.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was slick, I'll tell you.
Very
Those crispy-
frustrating.
Yeah. Interesting enough, just to kind of add to that, Chris, I received an email from somebody I knew in the industry, but it's not somebody I do business with. And it had a link in the email to click on to fill out the RFP, but it gave no information about what the RFP was for. Yet I knew this person, and I clicked on the email, and there was nothing suspicious in the email address, which really threw me off. But what the red flag was, why would this person send me an RFP? I had no reason or no need for an RFP. So I reached out to somebody I know that works at that company, and they just informed me our whole email system has been hacked. So that is spam. It's crap. So, but it was, thinking about, why would this person send me this? And that was the red flag. So you really have to, like you're saying, Jennifer, you really have to pay attention to what's coming in and going, is this really real or not? And follow a few steps to confirm.
Yeah, and like you guys did, call them. If you're not sure, it's better to be safe and call them.
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure FMCSA is going to pick up or DOT is going to pick up my call.
Not going to talk to us.
Yeah, but there are ways. And if you're not expecting an email from DOT, like how often do you get emails from DOT? Not frequently. because you are to keep your information up to date. And as long as you're doing that, and quite honestly, somebody should be on the DOT site regularly, like once a month, to verify, well, specifically the safety scores. You should be looking at them on a frequent basis. Well, look at the name and the address and the phone number that's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your own company. It's
Yes.
crazy that we're at that point, but yeah, one of the best things carriers can do is check the FMCSA and make sure there's no changes made that they did not make.
Right. Right.
So how else are people managing to defraud the industry?
So recently we've seen a lot of what they're calling collusion. And so that is when a carrier and someone at the broker's office or a shipper work together.
Mm.
So the carrier will finish his load, turn it into the factoring company, and then we'll call that shipper or broker to confirm the load. And whoever we're talking to confirms it's completed, no damages, it's this rate. So they get away with that until the factoring company follows up on their aging, and then they talk to normally an actual AP person, and they're like, I don't show these loans. So one of the best ways we found is you don't get your contact information from the carrier or even the rate con. What I do is I look on the website, the company's the broker, the shipper, make sure the email domains match, call there and ask for that person and see if they'll answer. And then you also do your verifications with more than one person. You do it with maybe a shipping manager, and then you also check with AP.
So all good idea, because nowadays, who's responsible if a theft happened? Who's paying or who's out the money?
The factoring company's out the money because they've paid that carrier, and your shipper or your broker, they're not going to pay because they're not legitimate loads. So the factoring company's out the money. I mean, they have a contract. They could go to court, but you all know what the fees to go to court is.
Yeah. So
Even worth it.
yeah. So what I'm hearing right away here is this is creating more of a an additional workload on the factoring companies to be able to verify, double check, chase down money that, may be fraudulent and whatnot. So the only thing that I can think is when we create more work for somebody, we need to start charging a little bit more.
Yes, it would be nice, but people don't see it that way. So
Right. Yeah. But it's going to come.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I was going to say if more and more factoring companies are having this issue, they're going to be going, look, we have to raise our rates because this is creating, and we've got to have backups, whether it be even insurance on certain loads or certain amounts of money we're going to expect to lose so much per year. We have to account for that in our pricing model.
Yes, correct.
And so the other thing I want to point out that I heard you say, I want to make sure that I heard it, but I want to make sure I understood it. Well, because we all know that you say things and people go, no, I didn't say that. But this is what I understood you to say, that you don't claw back a non-payment from the trucking company. Is that like no recourse?
So in this case, we could, yes. But normally what happens is they factor these fraudulent loads, and once they're caught, they quit sending in loans.
Right.
So then you can't hold from their future fundings.
Right.
If you reverse ACH, they've moved all the money out of that account that you have, so you get nothing out of it.
Right.
No, but the trucking company, you're not, if I was a trucking company and I gave you an invoice for a load and you accepted it, because you did your background checks and all that kind of stuff that you would normally do, then, and that turned out to be fraudulent, you're not coming after me for that missing money.
As the carrier,
Yes.
so we would try.
Okay.
We would try to, but normally you disappear after you get caught.
Yeah.
Well, no, sorry. I'm not a fraudulent carrier. I'm a legit carrier, but I got taken in by the fraud as well.
In this circumstance, the carrier is submitting the non-existent loads. So our client,
Oh.
the carrier, is the one that's committing the fraud, along with someone at the broker or the shipper.
Right.
Okay, so the collusion one is a carrier and an insider working together to defraud. Okay, well, yeah.
In fact,
In that case, I'm closing up my company and running away because I made the money.
if they're correct, you're taking their money and you run.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of a legitimate trucking company because, especially as a startup, I think factoring is a great way to start out because I need help with my cash flow when I'm first starting. And so I've never owned a trucking company. Johnny, maybe you can help me here because I know you ran one, but you know, if I factor a load, I give you an invoice. I believe you check out both myself and the receiver or the shipper, whoever's paying the load. You accept that invoice. You give me my money, my portion of it, and then you wait to collect the revenue from the payee. Isn't that how factoring works?
Correct. Yes. So you'll get paid when you turn in your finished load, and then we invoice your client, the debtor, and do the collections and apply the payments. So we're also your back office. So if you're just starting your company and you're driving and you have another driver, we're also your back office.
Which can be very helpful because you're going to pay for that back office one way or another, whether you have somebody in-house or you use a third-party service like a factoring company.
Correct. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
Well, that's
exactly.
what
But
my spouse is for. Sorry. Jennifer.
And you'll definitely see that a lot where you'll be talking to your client and he'll say, "You're going to have to call my wife on that."
yeah, he's
Yeah, that's what I
been there, done that.
Well, I mean, and when you're first starting out, that is a lot of most companies do start out as a whether it's a formal partnership or not, but the
Right.
spouse and the driver are typically working together to start the company going. I mean, this is how we do things.
Correct. And
Yep.
one of the spouses is usually working their regular full-time job
Exactly.
as well as helping the spouse who's driving.
Yeah. Yep.
Because typically it's not very profitable in the very beginning. So yeah, you need the incomes.
Correct. Yes. Well,
Yep.
and so they're working their day job. They can't do collections when a broker or a shipper is open. So
Right.
that's where
Right.
we come in. We do the invoicing. We follow up. If there's an issue, we'll email you, call the carrier and say, "Hey, we need a clear copy of this bill lading." And then when they can get it, they'll send it to us, and then we get that to the broker.
Yeah, well, today with cell phones, the driver should be taking better pictures.
You-
Oh,
Man,
that's another podcast.
that is a whole other podcast. Correct.
Okay, so drivers and owners take better pictures, Jennifer's saying, because that would help her out a lot.
Right.
And you know, we need less of the truck. We don't need all the need to steering wheels, just the
Yeah.
building. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. I used to have a really good program for scanning documents on my phone, And I know it's changed recently, but still, there are good programs. If I was scanning every day, then I would pay the money for a good scanning program so that I could get better pictures, so that I could get paid quicker from my factoring company.
So wonderful enough, iPhone has its own PDF imager on the phone. So you open the camera, you'll get the image up, and all of a sudden it'll ask you, "Do you want to PDF this?" And boom, you now turn it into a PDF to email, message, wherever you want to be. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Android does that. I'm not an Android guy. I'm an iPhone guy. So
Me neither.
Well, and I've got an older iPhone. Johnny's a little more hip than I am, you know.
I'm all techie. Yeah.
Hey, Jennifer, how else are you, let me say it this way. How else are factoring companies getting ripped off?
We also see the double brokering. Where our carrier, they don't even know. So a lot of times they'll send us a load and we'll get it and we'll say, it's Raycon is because we look at Raycons every day. So you learn what people's Raycons look like. So we have to call our carrier and say, this isn't the real broker. And in that case, the carrier needs to act quickly. That is the main thing. They need to call the shipper, the receiver, whoever's paying the freight, explain to them what happened, because a lot of times they don't realize they're working with a fraudulent broker either.
Right.
So once they hear the story, the carrier can send them, I did this load, here's the POD. And a lot of times they'll just pay that carrier directly as long as they can get payment stopped to the wrong carrier or to the wrong broker. I apologize. And the broker is going to be trying to get paid fast. They're going to be bugging you for that POD.
Right.
Which would be a red flag to a
Correct.
factoring company.
And even now, carriers, they'll call me and they'll be like, the broker is blowing my phone up for this POD. I'm not really sure why. And sometimes they just need the POD. It is legitimate, but you're right. It is a red flag when they're like, we need when they want the POD right that second.
Right. Do you see much with issue or concerns in what you're doing when you have a double brokering from a carrier to another carrier?
We do see that. And a lot of times that isn't with a fraudulent intent, but like you said, it is still double brokering.
Right.
For example, I had a client, he submitted a load and it was a different carrier on the bill of lading. So I asked him about it and he was like, oh, that's my neighbor. I was sick, so he did the load for me. I'm just going to bill it and then I'll pay him. So there is no fraudulent intent.
Right.
But there still creates a liability and it's still considered double brokering. And your broker's going to be mad because they don't know who has their freight, rightfully so.
Right.
And they don't know if they have the right kind of coverages. So we do see that. And you do also see that with a fraudulent intent. We've seen that as well. But a lot of times they're not trying to be fraudulent. They're just trying to move this load and they're sick.
Sure. Or the truck broke down.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say one of the things that we see, and Chris and I dealing on the insurance side of the world, between Canada and the US, we see a lot of people, you get too many entities involved with moving that shipment. And now we end up with a crash. And now the liability starts to spread amongst everybody, even though not everybody had an actual piece of the action, but their name is now involved.
Exactly. Yeah. The liability is the biggest piece when it comes to that. And they're starting to call the carrier to carrier shadow tendering. I don't know if you've heard that.
No, that's a new word.
They call the carrier to carrier shadow tendering. So it's kind of separated from double brokering because it has become big.
Right. Yep.
All right. As we start to wind this up a little bit, what would you suggest to trucking companies to avoid being a victim?
The biggest thing they can do is check the FMCSA, make sure there's no changes to your address, your email, and your phone number. And I would do that regularly, weekly, maybe twice a month at least. Because then you're at least gonna catch it quickly.
Yeah.
If you do become a victim that way. Another thing is when it comes to knowing who you're actually working with, like check the company's website, make sure the email domains match up. Call the phone numbers on the website instead of the phone numbers on your Raycon. You
Right.
can also, there's a free service you can Google online. You can check email domains and see how old they are. That's another thing we do in our underwriting process is we check an email domain. And sometimes you'll get them and they made it the day before they sent you your application. But then you'll have the legitimate ones where their company's 10 years old as well as their email domain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are great tips. Now,
Mhm.
Altline is a factoring company. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Jennifer, before I let you go?
Yes, we are a factoring company based in Alabama. We are bank owned. So that allows us to give very competitive rates, very competitive fees to help our new carriers, even our old carriers with their cash flow. Our main goal is to help our clients with cash flow and help them grow and continue to grow.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would think you don't. I mentioned new carriers as a somebody who might use factoring, but there's many other reasons. If I'm a 10-year-old carrier and I want to grow and I need that cash flow coming in a little quicker, would be another reason I would think, at least, that I
Correct.
might want to reach out to a factoring company.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, and they say, I read a statistic the other day, 3 of 5 invoices in the US are factored.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
that is
it's
interesting.
become,
Yeah.
yeah, especially with the economy the way it's been,
Yeah.
it's definitely become a
Sure.
huge partnership between the carriers and the factoring companies.
Right. Right.
And damn, if I was relatively new, I'd look at my credit card bill and I don't want to pay that
Yep.
whatever the interest rate is on my credit card. It would
Mhm.
be more financially of benefit, I would think, to use a factoring company and not cover or carry those credit card balances at their interest
Yep.
rates.
Correct. Yeah, or even lines of credit. So
Yeah.
we get clients it's not only people who can't qualify for your traditional financing, it's people who opt to go with when factoring over traditional financing.
Sure.
I
Sure.
think that's great. And for everybody,
Yeah.
if you want to reach out to Jennifer, of course, her contact info is in the show notes down below, along with the website for Altline, so you can get more information. Jennifer, I appreciate you taking the time to join Johnny and I on
Yes.
this
Thank you.
week's episode.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Well, Johnny and I wish we were in Alabama so we could
Yeah.
go golfing, but
Exactly. Yeah. It'd be way more fun than up here in the snow. I lose my balls in the
That's
snow and I can't find them.
that's where my husband's heading today is golfing.
Oh, smart
there.
man.
Well, Mr. Lockett, have a good round. And thanks, Jennifer, for coming on to the show. That was awesome. If you want to reach out to Jennifer Lockett, her contact info is in the show notes down below. Thank you so much for staying with us. Johnny and I really appreciate it. Here's the like and subscribe buttons if you would be so kind. Leave us a comment, hit those like buttons. Johnny and I appreciate it. Have a great day.